Welcome to the Worldbuilder's Anvil, episode 125. Evolution, Microevolution, and Stagnant Worlds. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the Worldbuilder's Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back. As always, I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller. Aren't you wry after getting back from vacation?
The very wry and normal Michael Miller. I'm very wry. I just got back.
I actually meant to say with spry. I don't know why rye came out.
It's delicious bread.
It is delicious bread. It's not what I meant.
It's one of the few weird breads I'll eat.
I don't think rye is all that weird.
I do because the name's kind of weird.
I meant spry, like spunky, because spunky's not usually you. And now, post-vacation, I think you've brought some spunk back.
I have a bit more spunk back into my... Actually, we should probably talk about some of the world building shit. Maybe we'll duck the next episode and go and talk about world building and vacations.
Did you do any world building on vacation?
Hell yeah.
You did? Okay.
And we'll talk about what I did.
Do we have to?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Times two. Sorry, go ahead and move your microphone. All right.
Well, I did because I'm closer to it. Like, I'm leaning forward now, so I didn't.
You're so lazy.
How is that lazy? That's me. Whatever.
I missed you. That's my way of saying
I wish I could say the same. Okay, so evolution, microevolution, and stagnant worlds.
And the reason I really wanted to talk about this week, it's something that I think way too much about, like every episode pretty much. And but it's one of those things where, there are a couple different approach, and to me, I kind of started thinking about it listening to evolution versus creation debates on the internet, which are largely pointless to listen to.
How often do you listen to that specific argument?
When they pop up my recommended YouTube, which is, I don't know, maybe once or twice a month.
Really? And you'll watch a new one each time?
Yeah. Well, I don't always finish them. Sometimes they're really horrible.
Well, but I also imagine they're probably pretty repetitive. You hear a couple of those arguments. I imagine they're usually relatively the same.
Well, it depends on how intellectual the people are. If they're really
or not intellectual.
Or not. Sometimes you have a good pairing of people who are on both sides present good arguments and you listen to it. Sometimes you listen for like 2 minutes. You're like, no.
Yeah. I don't go in for your fancy book learning.
I know. Or, and really there are bad debaters on both sides of the argument.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because just because a person is book learned and very smart doesn't mean they know how to present that information in an intelligent discussion form or argument.
Yes, that also comes through.
That in and of itself is
you need both
skill.
For a good argument. You need someone who has understanding of their argument, who's versed in it and has debating skills. And it's very few debates have both.
Yeah, and both in both parties.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
Sometimes you'll have a guy who's got both, and someone
one on
who
one
doesn't.
side.
Yeah,
and those are sometimes amusing to watch, but still not the complete 2.5 hours.
I sometimes get sad and embarrassed for the guy who's clearly very intelligent, but is not struck. He's getting eaten up because his structure doesn't support.
Or sometimes you sit there and you're going to let them get away with making that assumption they just made.
Yeah, right.
Something like that, But
I do that whenever we're watching like a procedure, like of course, in like a Law and Order or some kind of procedural show, or whenever someone's making an argument. When I catch a fallacy in the logic, I always call it out verbally. So my wife and I'll be watching television and somebody will say, well, this is because of that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, it's only like that because you're making a big assumption about this given thing, yes. And I'll point that out.
There would need to be something in between. Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes the shows, that's the way they win, and sometimes it just gets kind of ignored.
Most of the time. Most of the time, that's just, they have to move the thing along.
Yeah, they're just trying to get it along, and it sounds dramatic.
Yeah, you get that in House. We watch a lot of House, so
there's no fallacies in House.
Come on. Don't get me wrong, I love that show, but my point is that I argue with the show sometimes.
Now, the one thing this show is not, it's not a discussion about the reality of evolution or creationism.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that we want you to apply towards your world building.
And let's be clear here. Like, this episode really, I mean, we don't even need to get into creationism at all.
We're not going to talk about,
we're talking about a naturalistic way things change throughout your world, both physically in creatures and nature, but also in societies and cultures.
So we're talking about the creation of your world, not any actual earthly arguments. Some might approximate, like,
or
evolution.
godly.
Or godly. But, I mean, in theory, you could argue that there's both, and there are people who do that as well. You're a theist who would say...
Well, my point is that for the purposes of the usefulness of this discussion to a world builder, we don't have to get into creationism.
No, and we're not planning to.
Okay.
Any more than we have for the past 5 minutes.
So why did you want to do this one?
Because it's something I think way too much about, and that's sort of how I picked
That's just why, because you think about it a lot? Okay. That's reason enough for me. I mean,
okay. And the thing is, it really, to me, comes down to this argument of, do you want this sort of token-esque world where you have orcs and goblins, and you have these sort of...
I just want to clarify what you stated there. Token or Tolkien?
Tolkien.
Okay.
Or a token orc character.
I mean, it is kind of like a token fantasy world that is
Tolkien-esque. It has become token, where you have these disparate races that really don't belong together on the same world. It's like you've met them and they've existed together for thousands of years, and they seem to not really know each other even at that point.
Or even something that, like, you talked about in a prior episode where you had two cultures that are so different, but geographically they're located right next to each other. And,
exactly.
And if they're that close together and they've clearly have history of interacting, how are these cultures so different? But they've both been located in the same space for 1,000 years. Like, just based on, their physical location, they would have assimilated to the land similarly. They would have learned tools and weapons.
They would have learned what the other culture uses successfully,
and they would have
survive
adopted.
the same
Exactly.
And that's how the world works. So for me, it's sort of that versus this idea, and you see a lot in hard science fiction where it's like, I'm not sure if the DNA structure of this creature is very correct. Yeah, and that kind of stuff does not interest me. I know there is an audience for it, so I'm not saying it's wrong. But the thing is, there's a point at which you're being, I think, a bit ridiculous in world building, in the sense that time expenditure to get to story is so extreme to do it really correctly that you're missing the story.
This is something actually that my guitar instructor talked about. To put it much more simply, we were talking about technique and how there are certain things that you can do from a technique standpoint that are difficult, and doing it is a show of expertise. But at the same time, if it doesn't sound good,
who cares?
Yeah. So the big thing is that the technique should support the sound. So same thing with this, your research and your world building technique should support your final product. Yeah. So you can put all the work in the world into it. You can architect the heck out of your world. But if the world comes out like garbage and nobody likes it or enjoys it, wants to play in it or read about it, then you're not doing yourself any service unless you're just doing it for yourself to have fun, in which case, have at it. I'm not going to take that away from anybody. But if you're doing it for the sake of a final product, an avatar, and an audience, then, your final product is important.
Yeah. And, especially we usually deliver worlds through stories of one form or another. It could be a multimedia story, short stories, novels, role-playing games. However, the thing I wish I should have actually screenshotted the tweet. Someone tweeted out that they had to put a book down because great world building itself could not support a good novel. So the complaint appeared to me to be that they bought the novel because they heard of the good world building, recognized that there was great world building in the novel, but could not finish the novel
because the novel wasn't good.
Because they did not enjoy the novel.
Fair enough.
And I don't know. I didn't read the novel, and it was a tweet, so there wasn't really any explanation of why.
I've experienced such things.
But and this is a trap that people fall into in fantasy and science fiction. Since you spend so much time developing this stuff, you want people to know about your coolness in the world, and they're not meeting it as a character would interact with the world. They're being force fed, a lot of background information, these dumps of history and evolution of your world, which are irrelevant. Websites are great for that because some people want that, but they don't fit well in stories. But that's one of the reasons why I like to write sort of have a fish out of the water, involved in my stories, because
it gives you an excuse.
It gives me an excuse to hit certain things that I want to.
The thing that something that I feel, and you get this from like really big pieces of fiction, big universes, where you keep digging deeper, and you find out that the author or the creator had so much more to it. And we talked about this once before, where we were talking about. I know we were talking about like a story within a city, and what I had said is like, even if you have a story that is solely going to take place in the city, you as the world builder needs to know pretty much everything way outside that city, because all that stuff affects the city. So if the story just takes place in the neighborhood, then you need to know at least the neighborhood surrounding it or the entire city, because all that affects the neighborhood. Now, the reader might, throughout the entirety of the story, only get subjected to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But you still need to know what's going outside. That doesn't mean you need to force the reader to know that you've gone through those efforts. Because the bottom line is, if you've supported your story well by having that research done and doing all that ahead of time and knowing it yourself, it will come through. You don't have to force feed that stuff. So with the evolution that we're going to be talking about today, don't feel like if you go through all this process and all this work, don't feel obligated to, spoon feed it to the reader. They don't need to know all that stuff, but the mastery you have of your world should come through in your execution without them needing to know all the homework you did.
And you might be able to utilize a lot of the stuff that you're not putting out in the story as marketing. So essentially go to my website and learn more about this culture. Go to my website, learn more about the solar system of my world or whatever.
Why are there two suns? Go to my website and I'll tell you why.
I'll tell you why, and then
that
from there,
work. It does. Here's why.
And then from there, you try and use that to get them to either sign up for your newsletter and get them into a path to where they buy your novel if they haven't, or they buy your next novel because they like your world.
See, if I had a website for my world, under every single one of the research headings, it would say, because I said so. It would just go to my website, click on this link, and every single one, because I said so. It would get boring and repetitive, but I would laugh at every click.
And you would own those Google search words.
Yep, every time.
Because I said so. Mike Miller comes up 572,000 times.
Michael Miller. Wow, he's got a lot of pages that just say this one thing. He could have just pointed them to the same page, but they're all
they're unique pages.
He's changed the font on every one of them.
And if you read the URLs, because I said so, why I have two suns versus
because I said so,
why I have three moons.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All right. So evolution. But was it massive? I can't read your writing.
Okay. So evolution is essentially you're looking at cause and effect over a massive scope. The scope of the world that it's set in. Maybe an area of the world if you have a very focused story that you want to say in a world. Or if, you're talking about science fiction, maybe it's the whole universe, which would really be a lot of work. Wow. Well, probably really locations throughout that universe, not really the whole universe, but, and essentially the things to keep in mind is, evolution, you're pretty much forced to start from the beginning and go through time. You have to figure out sort of interesting questions that we haven't really answered, like,
are you talking like single cell organism
exactly
to flatworms?
Well, that would be the true evolutionary path, which this is the extreme, earthly wise, and probably in most places.
Probably.
But we don't really know about abiogenesis. I mean, it could be a god, it could be a mechanism. No one knows. People believe different things, but no one, I think, has a freaking clue of how life began.
I think they have clues.
No, they have all guesses. There's no real good science that I've ever seen on the beginning of life.
Oh, you're talking about the actual essence,
it's
literal starting point.
It's not called evolution, and that's something people mix up a lot. It's called abiogenesis, and it's where life begins, and no one really knows.
Well, of course. I mean, you're talking about the beginning versus the journey. Evolution is the
evolution
journey.
says, okay, now we have the single cell organism. How do we get?
How does it
everything?
But how it actually sparked into being? Yeah. That's say it again.
Abiogenesis.
Abiogenesis. Okay.
And one of the cool things with this is you'd probably pick up your world at the point of, if you want to do
cultures.
Well, if you're doing a strictly evolutionary path, because this is the extreme, is you would start with that single cell and go, okay, how do they get to this being, or what being comes out of there?
Did you do that with Gardul? Did you literally start at the cellular? Okay, I was going to say.
No, I'm going to be in the final approach.
Okay, I was going to say.
Even though I kind of started more on that side, really.
Mm-hmm. But like you believe or you subscribe to, your world started with the single cell and slowly evolved into everything that it is now.
Oh, the reality of how it began.
Because we did talk about how your world.
Well, that's the creation.
That's the myth.
Of
we talked
the world,
about the myth of how
to world build it.
Okay.
But for my world, life evolved over time.
Okay.
There were very rapid races that essentially started and came into being, and then after that, what I call the neo races all evolved into neo races. Okay. Which you do see on Earth. The fallacy of Gardul and most fantasy worlds are they don't interbreed and disappear and become, a species.
A new unique thing.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the one true thing about Homo sapiens there are countless human evolutionary dead ends that died off because they interbred and became us. Mm-hmm. Which is probably more the reality of it. But now, the good thing with doing something like this is if you want a really naturalistic world, you have to do a lot of evolution. You really have to think about the cause and effect. And the important thing to keep in mind is people think the larger a species becomes, you're going to have more mutations and the more likely, you're going to spark off new branches. Evidence, evolutionarily speaking, is just the opposite. The larger a species is, the less divergence you have in it, because there's a reason why those mutations didn't become the predominant thing.
Yeah, because they didn't work or they didn't suit.
They weren't quite as good as the main species.
Yeah, the things that traits that are being carried on are the ones that are being used, that do work well, that do support the creature.
And if you believe in evolution, one of our beliefs is it was during the Ice Age when humans came up, they were almost completely extinct in the southern hemisphere. Neanderthals were thriving in Europe, and Homo sapiens get down to a few handfuls of people. And it was the people with the creativity to predict that they might run out of water later to bury some in the spot that they were, and then keep hunting and gathering. And when they would come back the next year, there would be water waiting for them, and it might be dry. And if it is dry, they could drink the water because they thought ahead. And the ones that could not think ahead died out. So that's one of the beliefs of how humans sort of became human, was a near extinction event for the species. And then obviously stuff from there happens as well too. It takes long periods of time to really happen. This also applies to cultures and stuff like that. If you have a country that's under great stress, the Greeks were changed forever when the Persians conquered Anatolia, because they had this great threat of an exterior force that helped drive and shape the Greeks to get to the point of Alexander, which then took over that threat. And then they became that threat for other people around them. This happens at a societal level. This happens at a species level. This happens at every level.
For instance, I am conquering my neighborhood right now.
Yeah.
I'm slowly taking it over. Right now, I've got my building and the neighboring building. I'm working on the guy across the street.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've been doing the same thing for the universe. I haven't made it out of this room yet.
Well, you think bigger.
I still haven't figured out how to get that room. I'm trying to get my resources built, but I haven't got that.
You know what? I think you keep bumping up against the wall of trying to conquer your cats, and that's not going to happen.
It's not going to work.
No. So I think you should let them go and continue outside the house.
Okay. So now the con is really, if you're going to do this correctly.
Well, what's the pro? I said the
pro. It's the most naturalistic outcomes. That's the pro.
In the massive evolution.
Yeah, and if you're looking for naturalistic outcomes, it's kind of, you want to focus more on that. Now, the con is that essentially, the universe has been around for 13 billion years or something. I think 4 billion or so for Earth, and like maybe 3 billion of life forming and changing. So it could take you a long time to get to that Neolithic story.
Yeah. So if you're going to write a fantasy novel, you have to write 13 billion years of evolutionary history. I hope you have a lot of paper, big stacks of paper, or do it digitally. You'll save space.
And we want you to have genetic codes for all of the creatures on your world.
Well, I mean, why bother if you're not going to have all the genetic codes? Yeah. You can look those up online.
Or you can make up your own if you want it to be a different kind of species. Maybe they have 4 types of DNA instead of 3.
I like that. Now you got me.
DNCA.
Something like that. Yeah. DNA squared.
That's way too much math.
No, that's too much math. So, okay. but you get the con is that, like, if you really want to support it, there's a lot of work to be done.
And the quick hack here, and probably the more realistic thing that people are going to do if they're going down this path, is they're going to sit there and go, I want a story, a middle-aged fantasy story, or middle-aged.
If
I can start to hurt, honey.
Everyone's middle-aged. There's no younglings here.
But
you're looking at my gut. I'm working on it.
But probably more likely medieval. So they sit there and go, okay, let me start at early medieval period, and I will assume everything up to that point, and I'll move on. That's a very legitimate way to do it. The only flaw for me with that is if you get too close to where the story starts, you don't start gaining a flavor of a naturalistic culture. You start with a stagnant world. You evolve it from there, but it starts stagnant. And there's risk in that too, and we'll go into that right now, because next on our list is stagnant. Now, a stagnant world it's your token fantasy world.
Token or Tolkien?
Yes.
Token. All right.
But it's,
so your cookie cutter, this is a fantasy realm and everyone knows what that is, so I'll just start talking about it.
That's right. So I have my elves, my orcs, my goblins, my this and that, and they're essentially the same kind you'll see in a lot of different novels. And trust me, I have no problems with those kind of worlds in general. I've role-played many years in those probably. Mm-hmm. There are elements of them I like. That's why my species are sort of based off of those, and I call them that to mislead you to think they're just like that. But the thing that's really good about a stagnant world is you do get what you want. And yours world might not be stagnant in the token way, or
token or Tolkien.
Yes. and so you can actually have it like this all new races that you just start off with the races you want to start off with, and you put them where you want to on your map, and it is what it is. So it doesn't even have to be strictly something that has been that's happened several times before. It might be unique to you. Think Alice in Wonderland. That's very cookie. That's very stagnant. The world. Mm-hmm. You have the Queen of Hearts, and she's here, and it doesn't always make sense with all the things around it, but it definitely works for that story. I mean, naturalistic setting for Alice in Wonderland would be stupid.
Well, I mean, you're making me also think of, like, say, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things in that doesn't make sense, but it is because they say so.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so you might want to do this. There's nothing wrong with any of these types of world building. I would say, except for if you actually write down 13 billion years of history.
Yeah, we're not advocating that. That was all
we were lying.
Yeah.
So stop.
Kidding.
Stop
now. I was already half a billion through.
I'm suing. Yes. And if you're suing, remember our names are Frank and Ted.
Yes. Teddy. I like Teddy.
Teddy. And we're in California.
Yes.
Okay.
So, you covered the pro. Oh, did you cover the pro?
Well, I guess we kind of were. You do get what you want, and sometimes you need that.
Yeah. So the basic pro to the stagnant world build is just that you can say whatever is because I say so. See copyright Michael Miller.
Yeah. you need the logic in the world to make it work for people, but it doesn't have to be true logic. It doesn't have to be scientifically explainable. It's fantasy, folks. Some great fantasy is not naturalistic at all. I like naturalistic stuff. But there's non-naturalistic stuff I like too.
And frankly, there is science fiction that like creates its own fictional science, where it's not a science fiction that is set within the rules of science as they apply to Earth real world.
Yeah. It's not hard science fiction, it's lighter stuff.
Well, I wouldn't even say that. Like, there's stuff that I've read where like what they're talking about is not real. It doesn't follow the laws of physics or science as we perceive it.
Yeah.
They've created their own within the fictional world. So it still, in my opinion, qualifies as science fiction, even though it's not really following what we would call science.
But they deviate science at a point and say there's been a new law discovered of science.
Exactly. You know, and just like what, you know, one of our favorite, you know, age-old adages that any piece of science too far in the future looks like magic.
Yes.
So,
except to me.
Well, you know all and see all, so that's unfair to the rest of us.
Well, it's because Interstellar was my biography. Okay. Con.
So the con to Stagnant.
The con is if you're trying to develop a world that is naturalistic through this method, you're not going to succeed. There will be gaps. You know, it's like, why are hobbits always hobbits if they're being raided by orcs? Why don't hobbits evolve? Why don't they change their tactics to be more successful? Why aren't they wiped off the place of the earth by humans and orcs and people who just seized their lands? And people might not even hold it against you. And you will have an audience either way. But there will be people who go, oh, that's a huge hole. People like me who are jerks. People like Mike.
Well, even Michael. Even that.
No, not you. Mike. Mike's a nice guy.
Gotcha.
Mike
thank you. I don't like this Mike guy already. Well, but you may raise a good point. Even just with the hobbits is a great example. It's like, unless the hobbits breed like rabbits, why haven't they been wiped off?
Yeah.
It's not like they're so isolated geographically.
No, they're right next to Bree.
Yeah. Like, people could totally go in there and just wipe. They're like, oh, well, the hobbits have some really nice farming land. We could use some nice farming land. Wazow, gone.
Or I'm going to take my troops in there, occupy them, and force them to make food for me.
Yeah, there you go.
So, I mean, the world could be a much different place by the time you get to Mordor.
Well, if I'm really hung up on the idea of doing a stagnant, method, like what would be a hack for it?
So, think a little bit. So sit there and go, okay, this culture is next to this culture, or this race is next to this race. They are going to see what the other people do. They are going to adopt what works, and that will work for them. So they are going to take techniques that they see that are successful in their environment and apply it towards themselves, and it will work both ways.
I know we have two completely separate cultures, but we both live on this same big river, and they seem to catch more fish than us. What is it that they're doing?
What is it? Why are they throwing big pieces of rope tied in knots into the river?
We just keep smashing the water with sticks, and eventually we get a fish.
My arms are so bulky but
huge
tired.
Arms, but I only get like 2 fish a day, and that guy is just relaxing, kind of throwing his stick with a string.
Wow!
But he's got a lot of fish. What's he doing? I'm just going to keep hitting the water.
I'm going to keep in the water, or I'm going to make my own nets, or I'm going to go hit him with the stick
after he throws that string in the water.
After he brings it back in. But so there will be impacts. So just think about it. You don't have to spend your whole life. And if you're doing a stagnant world, you don't want it that way. And if it's not a naturalistic setting world, if it is truly, speculative kind of fantasy, let the holes exist and make that part of the story.
All right. So I think you have one more for us.
Microevolution.
Microevolution.
And this is sort of how
I like that one because it starts with Mike.
Oh, we like Mike.
Hey. We like Michael, too. We like Michael a lot.
Maybe we'll have to change the
Michael evolution. Michael could stand for some evolution. Hey, that's not what I meant. I was thinking more along the lines of like advanced evolution, so I could like control things with my mind.
Oh, I thought you were saying catching up with Homo sapiens.
No. Oh. I think I've more than surpassed Homo sapiens at this point. I'm kind of like Homo sapiens superior at this point.
Too much Marvel. I'd rather be Deadpool.
Oh.
Who would?
Well, I mean, he doesn't look all that great.
Who cares? Whatever. Yeah. Does Deadpool care?
I don't. Yeah. I mean, he does. Yeah.
And not.
Yeah, that's true. So, quick homework for everyone: go watch Deadpool.
Yeah.
Unless you're under the age of 6, 7, 18. It's an R-rated movie. What's the new?
I think it's 17.
16, 17.
I think it's 17.
you're not allowed to watch R-rated movies, don't watch it.
Just grow older, then go watch it.
Yeah, grow old. We want you to grow old now.
Or peer pressure your parents until they let you
watch Deadpool because it's really good.
Okay, now essentially
microevolution,
or microevolution, as we call it here in the Worldbuilders Handbook.
Learn it or magic.
Learn it or magic would be involved in that. Is essentially you can do pockets of evolution. So the idea being, I want to start off telling stories for the Bedrachum culture. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I kind of get them into the area, and I go, this is the kind of culture I want them to be at the time of my story. Mm-hmm. I work backwards to where they began. How do they get there? And that's how I got around to start doing all my stuff. Is I go, now later on, there's a culture next door they meet. I want the culture to look like this when they start interacting.
So
how did that culture get there?
So is microevolution more or less a technique than deciding the entire world evolved this way? Your pocket evolving given things to suit your needs at the time?
Yeah, so it's at the time you need them. So like across the world,
So theoretically, everything did evolve at the same time.
Everything evolved at the same time.
As the world builder, you're doing it piece at a time.
And that's the whole thing is with all of these are all world builder techniques. So,
okay.
It's not creating a creation myth for your world. It's literally going, how do I want to create the world that I'm going to tell stories in? And the thing I like about this is, maybe I travel to a different continent or to a new island with a whole new culture of people. I've never met them before. I know they're there and I know they look like this because they're next door, but I don't know necessarily how they got there. And then when I do that, I get to them and I work backwards to how they got on that island, how they got to the way they were when the first contact happened.
Okay. Makes sense.
And that way too.
I'm glad I asked that question because I actually thought that you were going to get into saying that a given thing, because it was isolated, evolved a given way, which also
evolutionary is a very good
which
point,
also definitely works that way. But that's what I thought microevolution was going to be referring to. Yes. And actually, you're talking about it from a technique standpoint.
Yes.
So I'm glad
strictly from a technique standpoint. Because that is definitely true. And that is a good way to get weird things within things naturalistically is go to Sri Lanka and there is a temperate forest on top of it, which is very odd with where it's at in the world. But the elevation gets high enough in the island that there's a temperate forest on the top half of the island. It's a completely different ecosystem than the whole rest of the island, which is tropics. That's so, right. Yeah, it's a weird, you find these little pockets that exist for real in the world. And that's the reason why, one, if you have a naturalistic world and it all fits logically, you've not made a naturalistic world. It's sort of like a language.
Because even a naturalistic world has weird exceptions. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And correct me if I'm wrong, there's an area in your world where, I mean, this is probably more of a cultural thing because I know, like, you can apply all these techniques to your culture building as well, all these evolution techniques. Yeah. You have a culture in Gardul that's like 1 or 2 tech levels above everybody else.
I have a couple things. I have one culture, my gnomes are, my xenophobic gnomes are at the center of, and they are sort of a technology fiend race. They worship technology. They have magic, but it applies to technology. So essentially everything's building up, making the next newest thing. And they are 1 to 2 tech levels above the rest of the world. And it's a culturally driven thing. They are isolated on the world geographically, which makes it harder for people to spy on them and figure out what they're doing.
Does it make it harder for them to, like, they must have travelers running around the world trying to find new technologies because I assume that I assume that they are not advancing the whole world by living in a bubble.
They are living in a bubble. They do not like traveling outside. The only time they will travel outside is if people leave.
So how are they at a better tech level than everybody else? They just are?
They are because they apply all of their efforts towards it. They don't apply their efforts towards arts. They don't apply their efforts towards non-utilitarian things. Mm-hmm. Strictly, they're a very utilitarian-based race. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have impressive structures and stuff, don't get me wrong, but there's a utility to them. Mm-hmm. The way they live, they can scry out for stuff, but they don't physically leave the island.
Okay.
And if you, as one of them, get that, you have that weird mutant gene that wants to travel and you leave, they will send a squad out to kill you.
Really?
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, the gnomes are badass in your world.
Yes. And if you land on the gnome island, be prepared for a whole hail full of shit because they don't want you
just
there.
totally sent this episode into the explicit domain with the both of us.
You don't screw with gnomes in my world.
Evolution. Explicit.
I love doing things. Everyone usually thinks of the big races as your tough races.
Oh, yeah. Ogres and orcs.
And don't get me wrong.
Elves,
I have minotaurs in my world that are really tough. But you don't want to fight halflings or gnomes. Those are the ones you really don't. It's kind of like in the world. You know, pound for pound, you don't screw with the mongoose. You just don't. Or a freaking honey badger. Love those videos. Thank you, YouTube.
They're nasty. So, did you have anything? Did we cover all the pros and cons?
No, we did not.
So cover the pros.
So essentially,
and cons.
the idea is you scale as you need. So this is sort of a world building technique where you're being an architect, but you're doing it in a gardening fashion. So this sort of goes along with, are you an architect, a gardener, or a gunslinger? But it's more the process of how you do it. And this is, you can be any of those, but you're coming up with the cultures as you need. So it's like what Mike was saying, where you know that one point, you're going to tell your story at, you need to know at least the ring around it. Well, here, you can have the framework for the whole world and know generally what are all of the major countries, all of the major cultures, all of the major races. But there might be other things there that you just haven't got to or are unimportant at this point.
What's the Worldbuilder type episode number? 86?
I have no idea.
We have to look that up because it's a 10-poll episode.
But we will slap it in.
I wrote a note.
This was post you, though, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it.
After 79. But we'll throw it in the show notes.
So just listen to the last 40 episodes and you'll find it.
And this is sort of how you take the framework stuff that you have and decide on when to build it. You want to start telling your story here, even though you're an architect. Do that as an architect. Know a little bit around it. And maybe you know the races and the cultures and all other places, but it does not matter outside of maybe a couple words of what they are. You know, maybe it's 3 words. That's all I have for some of my cultures is 3 words that just describe the culture.
Mm-hmm. They are big.
Yeah. They're Mongol-like in fighting style.
That's more than 3 words.
Yes. Well, 3 thoughts.
I would laugh if you flip a page and you have a race written at the top of the page and 3 completely unrelated words, and you wrote them down while you were drunk and confused. You're like, "What? This sounds assassin, spaghetti, and
poop."
And poop. These are the assassin spaghetti poop race.
And that might not be spaghetti, but we can't read that word. It looks like spaghetti, so we're going to have to go with it now. Okay.
The spaghetti race, the assassin, the spaghetti making pooping assassin race. I don't know. I just make this stuff up because I'm a fiction writer and I lie.
That's right. Okay. So now,
so the con to doing it this way?
Well, the pro. The pro
just finished the pro. No,
we're talking about scale.
Oh, you were talking
about the pro of this technique is it allows you to approximate naturalistic. So it sort of takes the best of stagnant, the best of evolution, and it allows you to play evolutionary and grow it naturally once you need it, but you don't have to waste all the time.
So I don't have to write 13 billion years of history.
Yes, you just have to do it all backwards. So it's so much easier that way.
So what you're saying is, when I write a new race in a new city, I immediately have to write 13 million years of evolution, just for that city. I don't have to do the whole world. So you're going to be rewriting 13 billion years of evolution.
Yeah.
Every couple days, every week, or whatever.
Yeah,
just for
so
small,
much easier.
For a small portion of the world. You won't have to do it for the whole world.
So much easier that way.
So much easier.
And once again, we're lying.
We're lying.
Do not write 13 billion years of history. Unless you really want to.
Unless you think you can.
Yeah.
I dare you.
And then share it. But we won't read it all. Yeah. Con. It can leave gaps in the world too, and so it's like, and there are parts of my world that I really have no idea.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. You have parts of your world that are really, really developed and have deep backstories that you're very well aware of. And you have other areas that, I'll get to it.
Yeah, there's probably some nomadic things there, but maybe not.
Probably, maybe there's a city, the people, stuff. What was it? Spaghetti poop?
I'll work it out. No pressure.
I'm ironing it out. Book 2. That'll be in book 2. Speaking of books, what's the name of your book?
It is The Steward's Son.
And do you have an approximate release date?
June 10th next year.
Really? Like that's
next year.
Can we count on that now?
Yeah.
June 10th, 2017.
It'll be my birthday party.
Yeah?
That'll be my release
party.
Like your
release party, birthday party. Very cool.
Okay.
The Steward's Son. www.garduel.com. And while we're dropping the website, I should also say that if you want to go buy anything from Amazon, go www.garduel.com/Amazon and buy whatever. It's not going to raise your prices. It's just going to help the website and help us, bring you quality content like this.
Or if you're going through an episode show notes and you see a link to something on Amazon, it'll also you can buy that or anything, and it won't charge you an extra dime, and it will support the show, and we appreciate that, and we do actually get some money from that, and we really appreciate the people who shop through Amazon.
Well, to be clear, we meaning Jeff. Yeah, Michael sees nothing from that.
I just doubled your pay raise, I think, last time we recorded.
So 0 of 0 times 0. Let me carry the 0. Still 0. The big thing here is, though, it's lost my train of thought. Oh, we have some episodes where we reference a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Like we'll have episodes where I mention like 40 different movies, and we try to get the links up for that. Like even this one, the only thing I have written so far is Deadpool. Yeah. So if you want to go once Deadpool, I don't think it's on video quite yet.
And Deadpool is a good example of how evolution works.
But once you're once you're ready to go buy your copy of Deadpool, if you go through Garduel to Amazon, it helps the show. So, yeah. And we appreciate it.
And we really do. I put a little plaque up too. Well, I really don't. But
did you cover the hack for microevolution?
Nope.
All right. So what's the hack for microevolution?
So here's the thing is, when you come up with this, like say you've decided that there's going to be a war between your culture and a different culture, and you know the effects to your culture. Later on, keep track of it. Have one place where you have all of the information for all of the holes that you've created like that in your world, where there was war between these two cultures. This one doesn't exist that far back at this point, but a long time ago they had a war. You have to address that when you build that culture later on. And then you mark it off. And when I say document, I don't mean handwritten. Make it electronic. You can keep it backed up online. It's a wonderful thing.
So basically, to keep yourself in check when using this method, record what you change and what you do and what you evolve as you go. Okay. So what's the Worldbuilder task of the day?
Define how you build your world. Mm-hmm.
Like using one of these techniques?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So evolution massive, stagnant, or microevolution. Mm-hmm. What about the real world task?
And it's probably because it's Memorial Day weekend. I want to broaden it out a little bit. Remember your loved ones who've passed. Take a few minutes. They don't have to be soldiers. Soldiers fought for them too, and maybe they would have fought for other people at the time and place of being correct for them. Just remember about those loved ones that have passed. Just think about them once in a while. Keep them in your life. Keep their stories alive, because that's what makes them real. How many of you can tell me a great story about your great grandfather? I can't say any of mine. My grandfather, I can tell story after story after story for, but great grandfather, people disappear over time because people don't know their stories. If you keep the stories of your loved ones in your heart and you share those with people when either appropriate or because it's an amusing story or a sad story, wherever you're doing it, it helps keep them alive. And I don't mean that in any kind of spiritual way, just literally just sort of as in a actual way. They're physically still here in story.
All right. So what about the tease for next episode?
Okay. I'm thinking on whether I'm going to change it or not. Do you just want to do the one I've listed there or do the vacation trip one?
Let's make it a surprise.
We'll make it a surprise.
Next episode, 126, surprise.
The tease. And as always, make sure to go to garduel.com. That's GARDUL.com for the show notes. It'll be under podcasting, Worldbuilder's Anvil. That's a great place to get all of the information from the episode that you've just listened to and to see all the resources that we've talked about in this episode. Thanks for joining us in this episode of the Worldbuilder's Anvil. Please be sure to rate and review us in iTunes, and please help get the word out to your friends about our show. And join me, Jeffrey W. Ingram at garduel.com to see the progress of my world and learn why I made the choices I did. And please contact me and let me know the topics you would love to hear in the future. Now strike, while the myth rolls high.